The moment I picked up the folded card with my name on it, I realized exactly what Amelia Thornton thought of me. Written in delicate gold ink were the words, Evelyn Carter, the burden. The guests at her wedding reception chuckled behind, jeweled hands as I stared at those two cruel words, burning brighter than any insult spoken aloud. I smiled as if the barb had missed its mark, pinned the card carefully to my modest dress, and excused myself with dignity they could never take from me. What they didn't know was that I needed only one quiet phone call to rewrite the story of their lives. By dawn, the Thornton family would discover the true meaning of charity. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where in the world you're listening from, because this is not just my story. It's a story about what happens when people mistake kindness for weakness. 6 months earlier, my son Daniel had introduced Amelia to me over dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the city. He was glowing with joy, his dark eyes lighting up every time she spoke. I wanted so badly to share his excitement, but something about her gaze chilled me. Amelia's beauty was undeniable, striking cheekbones, designer clothes that whispered wealth, a polished accent that turned every word into a performance. But beneath her smile, I saw calculation. When she glanced at me, it wasn't the warmth of a future daughter. It was the way one might look at an inconvenience they couldn't yet dispose of. She commented on the pasta being quaint, on the restaurant being small but sweet. And when Daniel excused himself for a moment, she leaned toward me and said softly, I hope you won't feel out of place when you meet my family. That was the moment I understood. To her, I wasn't family. I was a blemish on her perfect canvas. I had lived long enough to recognize condescension when I heard it. I raised Daniel alone after his father died, working night shifts as a nurse while studying finance in secret, building a future that no one saw coming. To the world and to Amelia, I was just a weary widow with thinning hair and secondhand shoes. But what they didn't know was that I had turned hardship into quiet strength. Over the years, I invested every spare dollar into small businesses, and stocks the kind nobody at the country club would ever discuss, but that steadily grew into something substantial. By the time Amelia's diamond flashed on my son's finger, I had more than enough wealth to stand toe-to-toe with the Thorntons. Yet I stayed silent, because patience is the weapon the arrogant never expect. Sometimes the best revenge is patience disguised as weakness. When I stepped outside the glittering reception hall that night, the air was thick with laughter spilling from the grand windows. The Thorntons' estate glowed like a palace, every chandelier blazing, every guest dripping in silken diamonds. To them, I was invisible, the burden who had been tolerated for Daniel's sake. But standing beneath the old oak tree at the edge of the property, I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. The line clicked, and a calm voice answered, double quotes, Mrs. Carter. He said, I wondered when you'd finally call. I think it's time, I replied. You remember There was silence, then a low laugh. Oh, I remember. Consider it done. I hung up without another word, the weight lifting off my shoulders. Revenge doesn't always need fire or fury. Sometimes it only needs truth and the right person. To reveal it, I turned back toward the glowing mansion. Inside, Amelia was no doubt dazzling the crowd with her practiced smile while her family made toasts about legacy and honor. Legacy built on lies, honor bought with stolen trust. But the cracks were already spreading, and soon everyone would see. The next morning, the storm began. At first, it was whispers in the city's business circles. Small investors pulling out of Thornton Holdings. Murmurs of questionable deals swept under expensive rugs. By noon, a financial blog published an anonymous report backed with evidence too precise to ignore, exposing how Richard Thornton, Amelia's father, had siphoned charity funds into shell companies. The Thorntons had built their empire on the illusion of generosity. In reality, their charities had served as golden masks hiding greed. Within hours, the story caught fire. By evening, national news channels carried it, their polished anchors, reading the details with thinly veiled disgust. I watched from my kitchen table, sipping tea in my small but warm apartment. The same anchors who had once praised the Thorntons for their philanthropy now dissected their deception. Commentators questioned how many scholarships, hospitals, and shelters had been starved of funds while the family expanded their estates and vacationed on private islands. The country was outraged, and for once, I wasn't the woman sitting alone in shame. The Thorntons were. Daniel called me late that night. His voice shook. Mom, it's everywhere. Dad-in-law is on TV. Amelia's crying. They're saying it's all lies. But he stopped, as though realizing I was silent. Mom, you knew, didn't you? I knew enough, I said softly. And now, so does everyone else. He didn't ask me more. Perhaps he wasn't ready to see me as anything other than the mother who worked herself to the bone so he could study. The woman who wore old dresses to weddings. But deep down he must have felt it. I had not been destroyed by their cruelty. I had simply been waiting. Over the next week, the Thorntons' kingdom collapsed piece by piece. Their so-called friends stopped answering calls. Charity boards cut, ties, investors fled, and lawsuits piled higher than the marble staircases of their estate. Amelia's flawless composure cracked as paparazzi camped outside the gates. Once, she would have sneered at me for shopping at a discount store. Now, she darted from her house in sweatpants and sunglasses, running from questions she couldn't answer. The tabloids were merciless. From heiress to hollow lies, one headline read, "The fall of a perfect family," said another. And yet, as I watched their fall, my heart wasn't as light as I imagined. Revenge had been necessary, yes. Their cruelty needed to be met with truth. But as I looked at Daniel's face, torn between loyalty to his wife and disappointment in her family, I felt something more complicated than triumph. Pain, perhaps, that he had to suffer for their sins. Fear that he might turn from me when he realized I was the one who lit the match. Still, I stayed quiet. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Sometimes it is enough that justice is done. One evening, about 2 weeks after the story first broke, I walked past the Grand Thornton estate. Reporters still swarmed outside, their cameras flashing like fireworks. Through the iron gates, I saw Amelia on the balcony, her once bright eyes hollow, her posture heavy with shame. For the first time, she didn't look untouchable. She looked like a frightened child who had built her world on a foundation of sand. I almost pitied her. Almost. The world forgot the Thorntons almost as quickly as it once adored them. Another scandal replaced theirs in the news cycle. Another family's secrets filled the headlines. But their name, once a symbol of elegance, had become a curse. Invitations stopped coming. Business partners vanished. And Amelia's world shrank until it was smaller than the apartment I had raised Daniel in. It was on a gray morning. Weeks later, when I opened the door to find Amelia standing outside my modest home, her designer heels were gone. She wore simple flats, her hair tied back in a messy knot. There was no makeup to mask the red rims of her eyes, no jewelry to declare her superiority. Just a trembling woman clutching her coat around her as though it could shield her from the cold. Double quotes, Mrs. Carter, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I don't know where else to go. I let her in. Not because I owed her kindness. She had shown me none, but because Daniel's love tied us together, whether I liked it or not. She sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I had eaten countless meals alone after long hospital shifts. And for the first time, she looked around, not with judgment, but with wonder. "It's so warm here," she said softly. Warm. That single word pierced me more than any insult she had ever thrown, because it told me everything. Her mansion had never been a home. She began to cry then, her shoulders shaking as though the weight of her family's disgrace was crushing her. Everything I thought was real, the money, the respect, the admiration, it's gone. People I called friends won't even look at me. Daniel tries to be strong, but I see it in his eyes. He doesn't trust me anymore. And I don't blame him. I let them humiliate you. I let them treat you like nothing. She buried her face in her hands. I thought I was better than you, but I was empty. I listened, silent, as years of arrogance unraveled into sobs at my table. Then, slowly, I set a cup of tea before her. "Respect, Amelia," I said, "is not built on money or dresses or names carved into marble walls. It's built on how you treat people when no one's watching. You thought I was nothing, but I survived more than you can imagine. You've never worked a double shift while your child waited at home. You've never gone hungry so someone else could eat. You've never carried the weight of both grief and hope in the same breath. And yet, you called me the burden." Her tears fell harder. I was wrong. "Yes," I said gently. "But being wrong is not the end. What matters is what you do now." From that day, Amelia began to change. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't easy. She came to me often, sometimes with Daniel, sometimes alone. She could ask questions about the people I once cared for in the hospital, about the families I had helped in small, quiet ways. I told her about real charity, the kind that doesn't come with cameras or headlines, the kind that means rolling up your sleeves and getting dirt under your nails. One Saturday, I took her with me to a community shelter. At first, she stood awkwardly in her clean clothes, watching the children swarm around her. But slowly, she bent down, helped serve food, listened to their stories. For the first time, I saw her smile without pretense. And the children, they didn't care about her last name, or the scandal, or the riches she no longer flaunted. They cared that she knelt beside them, that she listened. Daniel saw it too. His love for her had been bruised, but it wasn't broken. Over time, he began to believe in her again, not because of the Thornton legacy, but because of the humility she had learned at last. Their marriage, once polished and hollow, grew into something real, fragile but alive. As for me, I didn't reveal my part in their downfall. Amelia never asked, and I never confessed. The truth wasn't important anymore. What mattered was that the lesson had been learned. What mattered was that the woman who once called me a burden now sought my counsel, not out of duty, but out of respect. Months later, at a quiet dinner with just the three of us, Amelia raised her glass and looked at me with eyes that no longer held disdain. "To Evelyn," she said softly, "the woman who taught me what real strength looks like." For the first time, I let myself smile fully. Not the polite smile I had worn at her wedding, not the quiet smile of a woman holding secrets. This was a smile of peace, because revenge had not just broken them, it had rebuilt them, and sometimes that is the most powerful revenge of all.